there, so you want to be a zookeeper. And today I'm with zookeeper Sydney, and we're going to hear all about her journey. If you haven't seen these before, it's a whole YouTube series where I'm just interviewing different zookeepers and leaders in the industry so you guys can get an idea for how everyone is dealing with any challenges or successes at everyone's respective facilities. Just hoping to connect us all together a little bit more. Also, if you don't know anything about zookeeping and you got here, this is a great way to hear how people got into this industry. It can be really competitive and also a little challenging to hit the sweet spot. We joke it's like the chicken and the egg. You can't get a job without experience, and you can't get experience without a job, and so we're going to hear about how Sydney did it. So Sydney, why don't you just tell me a little bit like your journey into the career, like how'd you get your start?
Well, this is like my dream career. It's something I've wanted to do my whole life. So growing up, we used to go to the zoos all the time. There was a SeaWorld nearby where I grew up, my parents would take me to all the time. And so like right off the bat, I kind of knew this was something I wanted to do. So like throughout high school and up until college, like I was able to do lots of research, trying to find like the best schools to go to get good degrees. What did I need to do to get this career? Like I knew it was what I wanted, so I went for it. And originally I wanted to really work with marine mammals. So I went to Ball State University and got a degree in aquatic biology because that was the closest you could get in Indiana to marine biology. Fortunately, we're very landlocked there. But then doing internships at different sanctuaries, kind of fell in love with just zookeeping as a whole. Wasn't necessarily just set on getting into that marine mammal field, which is very competitive anyway. So I think I dodged a bullet with that one. First real internship I got to do, I spent a year working at a wolf sanctuary in southern Indiana. So every weekend, my senior year of college, drove 2 hours down to get to this facility. Luckily just on weekends, but I did not regret it. Gas money was worth it, all of it. And then graduated college, was fortunate enough to get a full-time zookeeping position right out of the gate, which is very rare. I'm extremely lucky, I acknowledge that. But ended up not working out due to some personal stuff. Ended up working at a humane society for a little bit after that, and then got a job back in the zoo field at a smaller facility in Northern California, where I was at for almost 3 years. Started out just as a keeper, but by the time I left, I was the assistant animal care supervisor, and then left that job and started here at my current facility where I am a flip keeper.
Awesome. So tell me about that first zookeeping job. Was it a big, well-known AZA facility, or was it a smaller, privately owned place?
It was a small, privately owned facility. It was ZAA,
okay.
But definitely not widely known unless you lived in the area.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that that's a good example of maybe why that full-time position was available, right? Those are a little bit easier to get if you go into the private sector or go ZAA, or even unaccredited is a way to get early zookeeping experience too. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. Tell me about your 3 years up north in Northern California. Like, what do you feel like made you stay there for 3 years? Did you ever want to leave?
It was another smaller, when I started, unaccredited facility. By the time I left, we had gotten our ZAA accreditation. Main reason I stayed there is because I was kind of scared to leave, because once you get out of the zookeeping industry, it's hard to get back in, especially if you've been gone for a certain amount of time. I had already dealt with that when I had to leave the first zoo, and then was at 6 months just kind of in limbo. Because it was an okay facility, but like a lot of smaller facilities are, and like a lot of facilities in general in zookeeping, the workplace environment isn't always the best. So I just kind of stuck it out, did the best I could, helped out, and worked to get our facility kind of better, I guess. When I started some of the animal welfare stuff when the place was okay. I mean, it had been around for a long time. It originally started as like a movie production animal training facility. So the person running it did a lot of older training practices, like from the 80s. And it's like, hey, there's more modern ways to do this. There's some better ways, using positive reinforcement. And then also bringing in like a lot of enrichment. and just being able to help out the animals in the best way that I could. But after almost 3 years, a toxic work environment does wear down on you. So I was just applying to a lot of zoos to get out of it. And fortunately ended up here, which I'm super happy for. So far, so good. Been here for a little over a year now. But yeah.
So tell me a little bit, maybe tell me more about what your current facility has versus what your previous facility lacked that makes the work culture more conducive to what you were looking for.
Good management.
Okay.
And people who like genuinely care about the animals. At my last facility, I kind of felt it was more about the money, but also like, they had all these animals just kind of left over from the movie industry that like people don't use anymore. We use CGI for everything nowadays. So we use CGI for everything nowadays. So we just had all these animals. They weren't getting out for shows anymore or, being trained for anything. And it was like, well, I can't get rid of them. So they're here. We'll keep them until, whatever happens. Here, it's an AZA accredited facility. So there's a lot of focus on conservation and breeding and, public education, all the good things. I love when zoos, or at least I think really good zoos, serve a purpose greater than themselves. So they are contributing to conservation or greatly contributing to the education of the public to show why zoos and aquariums matter. That we're not just keeping animals in captivity for no reason. There's a purpose behind it. And then being able to show people like, well, thanks to zoos, there are certain species that are alive in the wild that weren't a long time ago. Or how we have helped contribute to smaller countries in Africa to help them, you do conservation like on a local level to show like, hey, here's how we can help you, to also help the animals, which, a lot of facilities are part of. And I'm just really happy that this facility here does that, because my last ones that I've worked at did not.
So tell me, I'm gonna, when we talk about animals, we try to operationalize their behavior and really be really specific and scientific about like what we're seeing, instead of saying like, that animal's lazy. We try to describe what the behavior looks like, right? So I'm going to ask you to do that for good management. What are some specific things that your managers do for you that you really appreciate, that that puts them in that good manager category?
They ask me what I want, rather than just telling me what to do. They are like, hey, like, what can we do? Like, how do you like to be reinforced? We think about it all the time with the animals. We don't necessarily think about that with people. But we have monthly one-on-one meetings where we always check in with each other and see how things are going. And then like with my supervisor, she will have like a specific set of questions just to kind of like have a guide for the meeting, where then with my curator, we have more general open-ended discussion meetings. But they always are a good way to touch base with communication. And then, yeah, they ask like, what is your end goal for your career? What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I would love to like be a trainer. Keeper is fun, but if I don't have to do any of the cleaning and I just get to train all day and do enrichment, great. I'd be so happy. And so, they work to do things to get me more on that path track to be kind of what my curator's job position is as a behavioral like coordinator, which would definitely be like a dream job of mine. So I get to help out other keepers with any training issues they may be having with certain things, and kind of serve as like a junior consultant, I guess you would call it. But yeah, I just really appreciate everything they've done for me, and I can tell they care. And in general, this facility does a really good job of caring about professional development. So we do give keepers like a lot of opportunities to go do whatever they want to do to help advance their career. We just had a group of keepers come back from Africa that was helping out with the cheetah conservation project in Somaliland. So that was like, and the zoo paid for everything. So stuff like that is just amazing, because not a lot of zoos offer that kind of stuff, especially like this facility is really small and we're privately owned. And so, we rely on donations to get money and stuff, but the fact that they can still dedicate a certain amount of that money just for us really makes us feel appreciated. And I love it.
Yeah. So you talked about professional development some, which I think is awesome. And your example was kind of sending them off somewhere else to get some experience, or maybe like your example was big, like Somaliland for helping with CCF, but I'm sure like conferences are things that you guys are provided to. Are there some examples of professional development that you're provided that are, maybe more attainable for a small facility to provide that would, that are in-house, I guess, if that.
Yeah. So one of the big things is I just ask my managers for book recommendations, like what can I read to be a better trainer, or just to be like a better leader, how to work better in a team environment. So reading things like Animal Training 101 is what I'm reading right now that she just recommended to me. I just finished, what was it called? The Brene Brown book, Dare to Lead.
Mm-hmm.
That was amazing, made like a ton of highlights in that. It's definitely like my favorite of everything that I've read so far. But those are all recommendations that I got from them of like, what are the easy things that I can do just on my own time, just to help advance me up a little bit. And yeah, so just little things like that are very helpful. There's also more affordable, cheaper resources, like some of the stuff that you provide on Animals Amplified. I've done the Be a Better Keeper course, which was free. But then you've got some other ones that are pretty affordable for courses to do for things like that. We stream all the conferences that are here. So like we just, when ABMA was going on, we just had that playing in Keeper Office, and they were like, if you need to do a quick clean, just so you can make it down here and be able to watch a conference that you're really interested in, go ahead. Like we have full permission to do that kind of stuff here, rather than working at a place where they're like, cleaning matters. Like you have to make sure you're doing every detailed clean every day. If you don't get that done first, then you can't do anything else. But here they're like, one day of quick cleaning is going to be fine. Do something that's going to benefit you and make you happy.
Awesome. That's awesome. And those were really great tangible examples of how leaders can help. The one that you've said a couple of times that I'm going to push you on is you can tell that they care. So like what does that, what does that look like?
Just checking in, constantly making sure that we're okay. Like I said, asking how we want to be reinforced. Like it's like, maybe you don't necessarily want to be called out in a meeting, but like, hey, this person's doing great, but it's like, what can you do? And like one of the things I mentioned was like personalized thank you notes. So this past year when we got like our annual raises, we got these cards that was like, here's how much you're getting based on like your merit increase and all that. And our animal care director wrote notes on all them, but like everyone kind of got the same note. So I brought that up in my last meeting of like, for like, we were talking mainly about National Zookeeper Week and how to show that we feel, or that management shows that they feel appreciative of us. And I was like, that's what I want. Like, I would rather have a thank you note that is from people that I know and actually work with, who can give me like personalized examples of like, thank you for this. Like, you're great about this. You contribute a lot to this team, in this way, et cetera, et cetera. And then like by the end of the day, my supervisor came up, handed me a card that had little messages from all the local like supervisors and curators that were here that day with like specific like thank you examples for things that I do well. And I was like, this is great. Thank you. Like just that immediate turnover of like, yep, I know I heard you. Here you go.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about like what, I think most people, first off, we should share that the movie and TV industry is far less common, but it is still a way you can be a zookeeper. There are people out there who are training animals for movie and TV. Maybe animal trainer would be a more applicable title for what they do. But there are still people out there who are training animals for movie and TV. So that is a career path that you could go down, even though you weren't necessarily experiencing that. But that was one of the things I remember learning when I got started in the field, was like, whoa, there's all these, like, it's not just the one thing that I thought it was, right? There's all these different ways to interact with animals. Working at a humane society, while it may not be with exotics, can also be rewarding, albeit hard at times. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to ask was, tell me just a little bit more. Like, I think a lot of people now, like a lot of new keepers in the field, have far less tolerance for a facility that's not treating them the way they expect to be treated. And I do think some people thrive in some of those environments and some people don't, like, so I want to, be cautious that we don't bash on anyone, I guess. But what was it about you that made you, I mean, you already kind of said you were worried about leaving. You felt like you might not be able to get another job or get your foot in the door anywhere. But was that the main motivator for sticking it out? Or, you also talked about kind of being able to focus on what was within your circle of control and make an impact there while you had the chance. So was that helpful in keeping you going?
Yeah, for sure. It's just after a certain amount of time, when even the director at that point is just still not really listening to you. So you end up kind of doing things behind his back to get it. Like, I'm going to do this enrichment thing today, even though like he would be like, no, like, why are you wasting time doing that? Like, that's not what we, do here or whatever. So, and like, yeah, like you're talking about like animal or movie and training and stuff like that is 100% a valid field. It's just with this facility in particular, they were very much stuck of like doing things like they did in the 80s. And you know how some older men are, they don't really want to change. They're very stuck in their ways. And this is a facility that had like a lot of turnover rate. And a lot of people who did end up leaving that facility didn't even stay in zookeeping. Like I'm one of 3 that I know of that I worked with at least. But yeah, so mainly being afraid to leave. And then, I mean, I'm from Indiana. So moving all the way to California, if I left that job, I was also living in employee housing. I would have lost everything and I would have had to move back home. And then that's like a full reset that I didn't really want to go through. And I've always wanted to live in California. And so being there, and I was like, you know what, we're just going to stick it out. We're going to focus on this. I'm going to, circle of control. I'm going to, control what I can and then, expand that. And hopefully as new keepers come in, also be able to work with them. I'm like, okay, here's the thing. Like, I'm going to prepare you for what you're going to expect here, especially once I moved into a management position there. And being like, but, like, just keep your head down, get through it. It's a good way to get like your initial level of zookeeping experience, because we hired a lot of like newer people who were like fresh out of like Moore Park College or, just any sort of school. And like you just stick it out for 1-2 years, and then you'll have that experience on your resume, which looks great. And then you can move on to a bigger facility that maybe matches more of what you are looking for in the long run for, what you look for in a work environment, but then also in like a zoo and what type of zoo you want to work for.
Well, and this sounds terrible, but do you think you would be as appreciative of your current facility without the contrast of the prior one?
Probably not. But I mean, I still think what we do here is very different compared to a lot of other zoos. Like even talking to friends who work at other, AZA facilities or bigger, better known facilities, they don't have the like professional development that we have here. They don't have like as good of a relationship with their management team. But that also is partly because I came from that place, and I'm like, I will not go back to that kind of environment. If I notice issues, if I have problems, I'm going to bring it up right away. We're going to get this straightened out.
Yeah, so you know what your deal breakers are now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's so important. I think so many of us don't know that going into the industry or any position. And so it's hard for us to know like what is important to me when you're applying for that first job. So I guess that's like so many people get into that first job thinking that it's the one that they want, and then they find out that it's not the environment they want. And so I think sometimes you do kind of have to like put your nose down, grind it out, and that's all, and take the learning, right? Then you know so much more about yourself, what you can handle, what you can't. I'm sure you walked away from there feeling like you did everything within your power. You have no regrets of, what you attempted and what you tried. And that's got to feel real good too.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone? I mean, it sounded like you kind of, at least in your prior facility, you had that role of kind of giving advice to new keepers in the field. What would you tell new keepers in the field?
Be open to anything. Don't get your heart set on like one specific thing. Like, so like when I started, it was like, I want to be a marine mammal trainer at SeaWorld San Diego, and that is the only thing I want to do. It turns out very hard to do that. So, and keep an open mind. You can work with a lot of animals and then realize that you might have your heart set somewhere else. Like when I first started, was not a big bird fan. Had been bit by a lot of birds growing up. You know, you got to walk through aviaries with like parakeets and stuff. And then at one point when I was really little, a wild goose like chased me down. Was not a fan of birds. After leaving my last facility, I am a huge bird person now. I spend almost every day there working with our parrots and our birds of prey. And now here at my current zoo as a float, you know, I work with everything. But still some of my favorite animals, like is in particular a turkey vulture that we've had here for a little over a year now, who I adore and try to work with every single day. And wouldn't even look back, or like I have no regrets of not pursuing that original like marine mammal path.
That's awesome. Have you like have you thought about what's next for you? What's your career? I mean, you kind of said that long term you'd like to have some kind of behavioral husbandry curator position. Like, have you talked with your supervisors about like what a reasonable timeline is for a goal like that? Is there steps that you need to take in between there?
We haven't really gone into the nitty gritty, but that is something I want to do. We are definitely due for our next one-on-one meeting. I mean, my curator was just out on leave for a bit, so haven't been able to talk for a while, but we're at our next meeting, we're going to set some goals for me for this year to do to get me on that path here. So everyone starts out as like an animal care keeper, but then after a certain amount of time, if your curator thinks that you are like doing a really good job, you can move up into what is called an animal care specialist position. So it's kind of like our version of a lead keeper or senior keeper. And then from there, it'd be supervisor, curator, director, more of a normal zoo progression in a hierarchy. So I am on that path after just 1 year being here. She was like just really impressed with everything that I'd done, and worked really hard to get rid of the 2-year requirement that was in place for the specialist position so that I could start getting on this pathway and get moved up there. So that's definitely step one. And then also just giving me smaller opportunities to be like, hey, this person's really struggling getting this bobcat to shift, but you did a great job with our caracal. Can you go like watch a session, give her some advice? Little things like that that just start to help and just give me good practice for that kind of thing.
So speaking of training, what's something that you've done recently that you're super proud of?
1.7 warthogs are now trained for injection behavior, which I'm really excited about. Because that's something they've had like a lot of negative association with in the past. It was just kind of, we'd set up a fake shoot, distract them with food as they run through, jab them real quick with the jab pole, and then they would run away squealing because no one likes that. But after about 2 to 3 months now, we've been working on it. We've got a better habitat set up. They can run to the chute. They will come in calmly. We can scan them with the transponder to read their microchip, give them a nice solid poke, and on they go. And it's such a beautiful like injection behavior. I'm just really proud of it.
That's awesome. Do you think that you'll get an opportunity to talk about that or present that in any way? Like write it up as an article?
Maybe. Actually, what I'm really trying to do to write it up as an article, I want to train scent differentiation for that turkey vulture I was talking about. And so that he like, rather than targeting to like a color or something that people do, he would target to something that smelled a specific way, or station on stumps that smell only like the specific scent. And then maybe writing a paper about that. I think that could be really cool training to write about.
I agree. I think that would be awesome. And you know where you could present that is at IMATA, because they love discrimination training behaviors there. So you could go show the marine mammal trainers how awesome you are training a turkey vulture, and they'll welcome you right over there. They love that stuff. So anything else you want to share with the world?
No, but don't let the high turnover rate and a lot of the toxic things people talk about in zookeeping kind of steer you away from it. The industry as a whole is definitely improving. For the longest time, pay is an issue for everybody. It's definitely still an issue here. We are on that track to get us better, higher pay so that we can, all afford to have our own apartments rather than living with roommates. But the industry is getting better. So don't let anything negative you might hear right now deter you from trying to get in it. If your passion is caring for animals, you will find a facility that works for you. You just got to stick it out, and one day you'll get there.
I think that's awesome, because I do think there's a lot of negativity around zookeeping, toxic work environment. We're using a lot of those buzzwords that are out there about culture. about our industry, but the bulk of people are trying really hard to make it better. And, you know, sometimes it's a resources, sometimes it's like us as leaders need to learn our skills. So that's something I'm trying really hard to provide as Animals Amplified as well. But you also gave me a plug for my other courses. Thanks. I did not pay her for that, by the way. And so, you know, just and my courses are a lot about what you can control from where you're at, as opposed to you know, there's leadership stuff too, but it's also frontline keeper and your circle of influence. So I butchered that. You did a lot better talking about it. So I just want to thank you so much for your time today. And thank you guys for watching, hearing all about Sydney. Excited to read the paper about scent discrimination someday. That's going to be really cool. And again, I just thank you so much.
Thank you.